Okay, first of all, I'd like to remind you that this session is being recorded and that the recording will be published on the EMA YouTube channel. So if for any reasons you don't agree with this webinar being recorded, I would recommend that you disconnect from the meeting at this point. Also note that we have set up a tool that is called Slido that you will be able to use to send your input or questions during the webinar. The use of this tool is voluntary and you will be able to opt out to remain anonymous. But if you choose to use it, please be aware that you are accepting the use of your personal data, and you can find more information on this in the link at the bottom of the slide. So welcome everyone. My name is Jaume Gonzalez. I'm the Master Data Manager and Business Lead for RMS, which is the Referentials Management Services. And today I will talk to you about the RMS services and activities. So for today's agenda, I'll start with some housekeeping notes. I will then provide an introduction to RMS. Afterwards, I will describe some of the processes for RMS, including change requests and Delta uploads. I will then describe the change request process, and I will cover service desk. Then I'll present some statistics on the RMS side. Next, I will explain, I will give an overview of the projects and systems that are consuming from RMS, and I will explain what are the activities that we are currently busy with and what are the planned activities for the near future. The last agenda point will be a dedicated Q&A session for which we have reserved 15 minutes. So the plan is to only take questions at the very end of the presentation, although my colleagues may be able to reply in written while I present. But otherwise, we'll have a look at any unresolved questions at the end of the presentation. Also note that after my presentation, there will be a 30-minute session dedicated to ServiceNow, which is basically the replacement of Service Desk. And I will cover this briefly as well in my presentation. This should take place around 12, and you can use the same Slido details for questions on that topic too. So to join Slido, you can either go to slido.com in your web browser from either your computer or your phone, or you can use the QR code that you can see on the screens and then type the meeting number 1264017 and the passcode that you can see in the screen. Once logged in, you can send questions or vote for other questions that you support. Questions will be displayed in the screen in the Q&A session, and any questions not addressed during this webinar will be answered in an FAQ document that we will publish on the SPOR portal. So let's start with the basics. RMS was created as a solution to implement ISO standards 11239 and 11240, which relate to pharmaceutical dose forms, units of presentation, routes of administration, packaging, and units of measurement. And that's for the identification of medicinal products. And it's essentially a repository of lists of controlled vocabularies and terms that are typically needed for regulatory purposes. At the time of this recording, which is September 2022, RMS contains 174 lists. And as you will see later in the presentation, these numbers have grown since RMS was created in 2017. And these lists belong to different maintenance organizations such as EDQM, WHO, MSSO, and also EMA. And we will see more details on this later. RMS represents a centralized and single source of referential data to support regulatory processes across the EU regulatory network and the pharmaceutical industry. And last but not least, when RMS went live in June 2017, it replaced EUTCT, which is the system that previously held all of these vocabularies, and a backward compatible API that mimics EUTCT was put in place to minimize the impact of this replacement. In terms of target operating model for RMS, at the center of the model, we have the RMS services, which are the central repository and provide services around referentials master data. To the right of the screen of the slide, we have the maintenance organizations such as EDQM, MSSO, WHO, and others, from which EMA consumes data. And to the left of the model, we have users and consuming systems, which are typically industry, NCAs, or EMA stakeholders, and these consume data from RMS. As mentioned earlier, as of September this year, RMS contains 174 lists from different maintenance organizations. EMA with 154 lists is the owner of most of the RMS lists, but RMS contains other lists such as the pharmaceutical dose form, the combined terms, routes of and methods of administration, and up to 16 lists that belong to EDQM, as well as lists such as the language list from ISO, the MEDRA list from MSSO, and the ATC human and ATC vet list from WHO. This slide is to show you what NCA users and industry users can and cannot do in RMS. I think in the sake of time, I will not go into detail through all of the scenarios, but perhaps it's worth mentioning the exceptions that we have in RMS in terms of permissions. So the first one is that it's not possible to submit change requests for the MEDRA list. And in this case, any changes should be requested directly to the source, which is MSSO. The second exception are the ATC human and vet lists. And in this case, again, any new terms or any term updates that may be needed outside of the regular annual updates that we perform at the EMA at the beginning of the year should be requested first to WHO and then to EMA. The third exception concerns translations. So NCA users are able to provide translations for most of the lists in RMS, but exceptions to this are the EDQM lists and the MEDRA lists. And the reason for this is that these organizations have their own mechanisms for the provision and maintenance of translations. And last, in terms of exporting lists, bear in mind that industry users will not be able to download the ATC lists and the MEDRA. So access to the full list should be only through the relevant list owners. Now, in terms of business particulars for RMS, EMA can process and validate all change requests and create provisional terms as a result. RMS can finalize and approve change requests for EMA-owned lists. And for change requests involving externally managed lists, then the support team will liaise with the relevant list owners. Also, just as a reminder, the list information document is one of the places where we can find details on who the list owner is. But this information also appears in the list of lists view, as you can see in yellow, marked in yellow in the bottom of the screen. I just referred to the list information document in the previous slide. And at this point, I'd like to explain that this is a document which you can find in the RMS portal next to each RMS list. And this contains important practical information on the specific RMS list, such as description, where the list is used, whether the list belongs to the human domain or the vet domain, or perhaps both, who the list owner is, whether the list accepts change requests or not, how the validation and approval processes work, etc. So each list in RMS should have its own list information document, and you should be able to view it by clicking on the document icon that is marked with the red arrow to the right of the screenshot. And in the bottom screenshot, you can see a representation of what the list information looks like. Now, I will not explain in detail all of the functionalities in RMS, as there is an RMS web user manual under the document section in the RMS portal with comprehensive information on this. But I would like to give you a quick overview of what users can do in RMS. In terms of searches, users can do simple searches. They can do more complex searches using filters, and they can save complex search queries so that they can be used at any point in time in the future. Users can browse the list of lists. They can view the terms within a given list. They can see the details within specific terms, and they can browse the list information documents, which I will discuss later. RMS allows users to export full lists or specific selected terms or translations, with some exceptions as explained earlier. And this can be done in either CSV or XML format. Users can search, view, edit, or delete change requests, and they can submit change requests to either create, update, or delete terms, or to create or update lists. RMS also allows users to group terms within a list or across lists through the use of tags. It has a subscription functionality to inform users via email whenever the selected lists have been modified. Then translations can be searched and viewed through the RMS portal, and NCA users can provide translations either online and offline. And as mentioned above, more details on this can be found in the RMS web user manual. And as a final functionality, there is a documents area in the RMS portal, which contains important documentation, both general and technical, as well as information for NCAs. So the next section is to describe what are the business processes in RMS. So one of the main areas of work in RMS is under the category of data stewardship. Within this category, we find processes such as delta updates and periodic updates of RMS lists, such as EDQM lists, MEDRA, VEDRA, the ATC human, and the ATC vet list. The management of change requests tasks submitted by RMS users also fall under this category, and this includes tasks to create or update terms or lists. Data stewards can also create, update, or delete records directly in the database, and this is outside of any change requests. Another group of processes corresponds to activities related to EMA service desk, from which the data steward will be assigned specific tickets related to RMS, and these may be either data quality incidents, data quality questions, IT incidents, or other RMS related questions. There's also a plan to implement data quality management activities for RMS in the near future, but there is nothing concrete at the moment. So at this point, I will not expand on this. It's also important to mention that the RMS team, together with the OMS team, meet regularly with the key user group to identify areas of improvement from any of these processes. Now, the next section concerns the change request process. So typically, the starting point for a change request is whenever a user needs to submit an application to a competent authority, and a referential needed in the application is either missing or it needs to be updated. For this, the user should submit a request through the SPO portal asking for the pre-registration of a new term or for the update of an existing term in RMS so that the application can then be completed and submitted. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, users can submit change requests through the RMS portal to either create new lists or terms, to update already existing lists or terms, or to delete terms. There is no time for this today, but if you want detailed instructions on how to submit change requests, again, you can find these in the RMS web user manual, and you can see the link to it in the slide. And if you have any issues or queries concerning change requests, then please raise them through ServiceNow, and there will be details on this later on this presentation. So I'd like to explain how the RMS team handles requests for terms and lists. So let's start with terms first. So the process starts with an RMS user submitting a request to either update, add or delete an RMS term. And this request should be accompanied by relevant supporting documentation. The next step is the validation phase. And here data stewards will check that the request is appropriate, that it's not a duplicate of another term, that the request has been done for the correct list, etc. And data stewards will use all available guidance and reference information, such as the list information document, to perform this validation. The SLAs for validation of terms are typically 2 to 5 working days. And there are 3 possible outcomes out of this validation. If the request is not clear, the change request will be returned and there will be questions for the requester to clarify. If the request is considered invalid, then the task will be invalidated and the reasons for the rejection will be explained in the notification that the user will receive. And any disagreements or questions after this rejection should be handled through ServiceNow, stating the change request number for easy identification. The third outcome is if the request is considered valid. In this case, the term will be created as provisional, assuming that the request is for a new term, but the term will remain unchanged if the request is for a term update. Now, all valid requests will then go to the next step, which is the approval phase. This is a more in-depth assessment of the request where subject matter experts will be consulted if necessary. The SLAs here are 1 to 2 months, and there are 2 possible outcomes. Similarly to the validation phase, if the request is considered invalid, the task will be rejected. The reasons for the rejection will appear in the notification, and any disagreements should be handled through ServiceNow. And if the request is considered acceptable, then the term will be updated in the relevant RMS list. The main steps for the management of list change requests are not too different from the term change requests, but there are some differences, the main one being the SLAs. So for list change requests, the process starts with an RMS user submitting a request to either add or update a list. And in this case, the request should also be accompanied by relevant supporting documentation. Similarly to what happens for term change requests, the next step will be the validation phase. And again, here is where the data stewards will check that the request is appropriate, that the list requested is not a duplicate or has a big overlap with another list. And data stewards will use all available guidance and expertise to perform this validation. The SLAs for validation of list change requests are typically 5 to 20 working days. And there are 3 possible outcomes out of this validation. If the request is not clear, it will be returned and there will be questions for the requester to clarify. If the request is considered invalid, the task will be invalidated. The reasons for the rejection will be included in the SPOR notification, and any disagreements should be handled through ServiceNow. And the third outcome is if the request is considered valid. In this case, the list will not be published yet, as the assessment of the full list will still be pending, but the preparatory work to publish the list will start. Again, similarly to what we've seen for term requests, all valid list change requests will go to the next step, which is the approval phase. Here, again, subject matter experts will be consulted if necessary. The SLAs here are 2 to 6 months, and there are two possible outcomes. If the request is considered invalid, the task will be rejected. The reasons for the rejection, again, will appear in the notification, and any disagreements should be handled through ServiceNow. And if the request is considered acceptable, then the list will be created in case of a new list, or updated in case of a list update. Now, the top screenshot is just to show you where to find the change request section in the RMS web portal. And you can also see in yellow the buttons for submitting list change requests and term change requests. And in the bottom screenshot, you can see the general information that is required to submit a change request. In this screenshot, you can see the information on the actual term that should be populated in the change request. And you can see marked with a red asterisk the mandatory information. The top screenshot here is to show you the area to search for specific change requests. And the bottom screenshot is an example of a search for specific change requests. Now, as mentioned a few slides back, RMS requests go through two different steps. The first is the validation step, where data stewards will check for completeness. They will check that it's the right type of request, etc. And then there's the approval step, which is a more in-depth assessment of the request, and it's where the subject matter experts may be consulted if applicable. In terms of term statuses, when a term passes validation, it will be published as provisional. If it doesn't pass validation, the term status becomes invalid and the term will not be published. When terms are approved, their status becomes current. And when terms are rejected, their status becomes either nullified or non-current, which means that the term can still be used, but is no longer recommended for use, in which case a current term should be used instead. And in terms of how term statuses fit into regulatory procedures, industry can submit applications to the relevant competent authority using provisional or current terms, but by the time of the approval of the procedure, applications should only contain referentials which have the status current. Now, since RMS go live in 2017, we have received roughly 1,600 change requests, of which approximately 69% were requests for new terms, and 70% of all change requests were either approved or approved with changes. Now, in the list that you can see in the slide, you can see the ranking of the top 10 RMS lists, which have historically received the most number of change requests since go live. And you can see in brackets the exact number of requests received since the creation of RMS in 2017. So this gives you an idea of the most recurrent lists in RMS. The statistics also show rejections, and specifically we see that 25% of all change requests received since RMS go live in 2017 have been either invalidated at the validation phase or rejected in the approval phase. You can see the top 5 RMS lists with the highest number of change requests, either invalidated or rejected. So we could say that these are the most controversial lists, or the list that trigger the most number of issues. For this reason, the next 5 slides contain details on why some of the requests for these 5 lists are sometimes rejected, and it provides some tips on how to avoid this. They are a bit packed with information, but I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can, and hopefully this will be useful for users, and it can even be used as guidance to submit change requests in the future. So the first list is the units of measurement, which is basically a collection of units needed to enter information on medicinal products. This list is consumed in systems such as EAF, XCVMPD, and EUPD. Some of the issues experienced with requests for this list are, for instance, the confusion between units of measurement and units of presentation. So for instance, we received once a request for Petri dish to be added as a unit of measurement, and the fact that some requests include references to what is being measured. So for example, milligrams of pili or milliliters of paracetamol, as opposed to how it's being measured. So a tip to avoid issues with this list is to consult with the RMS team through ServiceNow. And apologies because the next 5 slides make reference to Service Desk portal, but as of the 12th of September, this should say ServiceNow. So as I was saying, recommendation is to contact ServiceNow to consult before submitting the change request. If there is an indication that the request may be controversial. It's possible to add new terms to this list, including legacy terms. And as an advice for any lists, really is to check already existing examples in the list. Another tip is to avoid elements which are not actual measures. So in the examples below, pili and paracetamol, unless this is strictly necessary and considered part of the units of measurement, such as in cases like 80% effective dose in rabbit, for instance, where the reference to the animal is needed, as this is the name of the laboratory measure. Now, planned activities for this list are for the sport team to liaise with the key user group and to increase guidance in the list information document. When using units of measurement in a regulatory process, it's important to bear in mind that terms used in product literature and in EAF, UPD, PMS, and XVMPD, or in structured product data should be equivalent, but they may not be a copy and paste or an exact match, as they may undergo standardization. And examples of this standardization may be the use of singular versus plural, the use of UK versus US spelling, or the removal of unnecessary information, such as in the examples of pili and paracetamol mentioned above. The next list is the pharmaceutical dose form, which describes the physical manifestation of a product that contains the active and or inactive ingredients intended to be delivered to the patient. This list is consumed in EAF and in XVMPD, and it's used to describe the manufactured item, which is the item as presented in the packaging by the manufacturer, or the pharmaceutical product in the EU Marketing Authorization Application dossiers for human and vet medicines. Issues with this list often relate to requests for terms which have already been rejected by EDQM or which don't follow EDQM editorial rules. If you need to submit a request for this list and you suspect that the request may be difficult to assess or controversial, again, please consult through ServiceNow. New terms can be added to this list, and as always, we recommend to check already existing terms in the list before you submit the request. And in this specific case, we strongly encourage users to adhere to the rules in the EDQM standard terms guidance, which is available through the link in the slide. As an exception for legacy terms, and in order to avoid blocking regulatory submissions, requests for non-EDQM compliant terms may be accepted in SPOR as non-current. Synonyms cannot be added as these are not foreseen in the standard terms database, and translations cannot be provided as EDQM has its own mechanism for the maintenance of translations. Terms in this list can be updated and deleted. This should be requested through the EDQM change request form, for which you have the link in the slide. And this should be included as an attachment in the change request to be created in the RMS portal. For this list, the support team also plans to liaise with the key user group and to provide more guidance in the list information document. Now, again, in a regulatory context, please remember that standard terms such as pharmaceutical dose forms referenced in product literature are in EAF, PMS, XVMPD, or in structured product data should be equivalent, but they may not always be a copy and paste or an exact match, as they may have been standardized by EDQM. And again, examples of this may be the use of singular versus plural, the UK-US spelling, or other naming conventions. And an example of this is the fact that, for example, EDQM refers to capsule heart instead of heart capsule. Another list which sometimes raises issues is the special precautions for storage, which describes the possible storage and/or transport conditions for a medicinal product. This information is used in product information, and the content should be in accordance with the note for guidance on declarations of storage conditions, and you can find the link in the slide. And this is basically a document that belongs to the quality working party. This list is consumed in the electronic application form, and it's not foreseen to be comprehensive or exhaustive. The main issue with the requests that we receive for this list is that many of them are very product specific. So for instance, we may receive requests for store below 10 degrees or store below 15 degrees and store below 20 degrees. But the list is not foreseen to capture all of these terms as individual terms. So for the moment, new terms cannot be accepted in this list, but the possibility to review and expand this list is being discussed in the context of PMS implementation. Now, the support team will liaise with QRE and the labeling office to identify the next steps. The quality working party, as owner of the above note for guidance, may need to be involved in the review, and we will communicate when we reach a conclusion on this list. In the meantime, the advice is that users should avoid sending requests for this list, and users of EAF that need a specific storage condition that is missing in RMS should select the closest term available and may provide a clarification, for example, as an annex to the electronic application form, explaining that they have registered an inconsistency between the EAF and the product information, given the lack of the required term as advised by the support team. Okay, I think, yeah, this is the last but one list. So the ATC human list is a classification system for substances used in medicines for human use. You can see the link to the list in the slide. And for your information, this is consumed by EAF, XCVMPD, and it will also be consumed in PMS. The main issue encountered with this list is that many requests concern codes from national classification systems, which are not official ATC codes. The ATC human list in RMS foresees the creation of new codes, as well as the update or deletion of codes. But for this, the request needs to be sent to WHO first, and then to EMA. And users should include supporting documentation in the request, such as proof of the code published by WHO, be it preliminary or final. Plans for the future of this list for the list information document to be updated to reinforce the message that any codes not accepted for review or not approved by WHO will not be published in RMS. And last but not least, A tip to ensure a straightforward regulatory process is to submit the request for a new ATC code to WHO EMA in a timely manner to ensure that the ATC code is final by the time of the approval of the regulatory procedure. And last but not least, if you require a new national code in XBMPD, meaning a non-official WHO code, you should register it following the current process. And as far as we are aware, there haven't been any of these national classification codes requested for EAF historically. So this shouldn't be a problem for EAF. And having said this, RMS will follow up to check if this may become an issue in the future. And the last controversial list is the target species, which describes the species for which the veterinary medicinal products are intended for. It's important to clarify that this is not a taxonomic classification, and it's just a practical collection of terms used in product literature. This list is consumed by EAF and UPD. And the main issues with this list is that we receive requests for supposedly new terms, which in reality already exist as synonyms of other main terms. So for instance, we received a request for a new term dove, but this was already registered as a synonym of pigeon. Another recurring issue is the requests for target species, which are very generic, such as small animals or small pets. And in general, these will be rejected. Also, we have issues related to nomenclature. So for instance, sometimes there is confusion between species and subspecies and varieties and other scientific aspects. Terms in this list can be added, updated, or deleted, but before requesting any of this, we strongly recommend users to carefully consider the meaning of the term and to check the term attributes, as these give more context on the term. So for instance, it may provide information on the age range, the physiological status, the production type, etc. As always, we recommend to check the relevant terms already existing in RMS, as well as synonyms and descriptions before submitting the request. There has been a group of subject matter experts to review requests for target species in the context of UPD implementation, and this group will continue to be consulted for future requests in conjunction with QRD as the list reviewer, CMDV, and CVMP as the list owner. The list information document is planned to be reviewed to provide more clarity and tips to avoid validation issues. And similarly to what we said for pharmaceutical dose forms and units of presentation, there might be also standardization in the area of target species. Again, examples of this might be the singular versus plural, all the naming conventions. So for example, we could have hen in the SPC, but this might be registered as turkey hen in RMS. Okay, so let's now focus on service desk tickets and see how these are handled. The process starts with either an internal or external user raising a ticket related to a system issue, or to follow up on an issue with a change request, or perhaps concerning access issues or requests for information. Service desk will analyze the ticket and triage it according to the nature of the issue and the teams that should be involved and the relevant SLAs. If it's an IT issue, the ticket will be assigned to IT support, who should then fix the issue with the system, and this will be the end of the process. If, on the other hand, the ticket is a business issue or a data issue, which could be an IT incident, a data quality incident, a data quality question, or any other type of RMS-related question, and you can see examples of all of those in the slide, Then the ticket will be assigned to an EMA data steward. The data steward will then analyze the ticket and will do his best or her best to resolve the ticket within the agreed SLAs that you can see in blue on the right part of the slide, and involving IT support whenever this is needed. For IT incidents, the data steward will typically suspend the ticket, inform the user, and raise a new ticket for IT support. For data quality incidents, the data will be corrected in RMS if changes are considered necessary. And for data quality questions, these will be collected and shared with the key user group, and the impact on data quality rules will be analyzed, and data may be fixed if this is considered necessary. Now, a big change around service desk tickets is the fact that EMA has gone live with a new tool called ServiceNow, which is to be used to report incidents or submit questions. And this is part of the EMA's cloud strategy and the information security strategy. So the advantages of this new tool are that processes are now more in line with industry best practices, and the service is more user-oriented. So ServiceNow replaces EMA Service Desk, also known as Jira, and this is for IT services. And although Jira hasn't been dismantled yet, it now points to ServiceNow, as you can see in the screenshot at the bottom of the screen. So to connect to ServiceNow, you need to navigate to the URL that you can see in the slide and log in with using your EMA credentials. So for your information, any tickets open before September the 12th will be addressed via Service Desk, and anything received after this date will be handled through ServiceNow. So let's now look specifically at how we can actually submit questions and issues. So to submit RMS data quality questions, RMS operational questions, or any other type of RMS questions in ServiceNow, you need to select Ask a Question, then Request for Information, then specify SPOR as the service and RMS as the service offering, and then the user should fill in the form with the required information, as you can see in the screenshots. To report incidents with RMS data quality or IT incidents, the user should select Applications, then SPOR, then report an issue with RMS, and then provide all of the relevant information. ServiceNow also contains an option to request an RMS service. In principle, it's not expected that this functionality will be used at all, given that the RMS portal allows for the submission of all types of RMS change requests. But having said this, if for any reason the type of request needed does not fit in any of the options provided in the RMS portal, then this option could be used in very exceptional cases. In terms of SLAs for ServiceNow, these remain unchanged, and you can see them published in the document for which you can see the link in the slide. There is an introductory video on ServiceNow in the URL that you can also see in the slide, so please feel free to check it to get familiarized with the tool in your own time. And last but not least, if you need to log an issue or ask a question regarding the actual new submission tool, please raise a ticket via ServiceNow. Now, let's have a look at some RMS statistics to give an idea of the amount of work and the growth in RMS. So in terms of volumes, you can see that between 2021 and 2022, the number of terms and lists in RMS increased significantly, and this was mainly due to new lists created for EMA projects such as PMS, IRIS, DADI, and AZU, as well as other maintenance activities such as mapping activities for PMS implementation. If we look at the number of change requests received for RMS, there was a decrease of 63% in 2022, as we went from 702 requests last year to 255 requests in the first half of 2022. And this is largely due to the fact that the number of change requests peaked in 2021 due to the mapping activities between Article 57 and RMS, as well as implementation work for EVVET3 and EUPD. When we look at SLAs, we can see that an average of 100% of change requests were resolved within the agreed SLAs. And I repeat, this is only for the first 2 quarters of 2022. If we now drill down into change requests by request type, and this is the chart to the left of the slide, we can see a general decrease in most types of change requests in 2022 as compared to 2021. And this is again linked to the completion of the Article 57 to RMS mapping activities, as well as UPD and EVVET3 implementation, which peaked in 2021. If we look at change requests received in the first half of 2022 per status, we see that the approved change requests continue to be the main status, with only 13% of change requests rejected in the same reporting period. In terms of EMA service desk tickets, the number of requests in Q1 and Q2 2022 are in the same order of magnitude than in 2021, with most tickets concerning questions on mapping of referentials, term details, spore access, list updates, translations, exports of lists, versioning in RMS, and others. And 81% of these tickets were resolved within the agreed SLAs. Now, the graph with the pyramid is to put into perspective the frequency of data quality incidents in RMS. So as you can see at the bottom of the pyramid, at the time of this webinar, RMS contains a bit over 127,000 terms, and there are 12,504 users registered. And in the first half of 2022, only one data quality incident was reported through Service Desk. So if we now look at the number of SPO users, the data tells us that only 0.01% of users reported data quality incidents, as there was only one incident reported amongst the more than 12,000 SPO users. And if we look at the number of terms in RMS, we see that virtually 0% of the terms triggered data quality incidents reported by users in Service Desk, as there was just one incident reported for the more than 127,000 terms published in RMS. So with this in mind, we can conclude that the level of data quality incidents in RMS is extremely low. The other chart in the slide concerns the customer satisfaction survey that took place in the last quarter of 2021. And as you can see in this chart, 43% of the responders rated the quality of RMS services as average, and 46% of the responders rated it as good. So we're getting closer to the end, and in this next section, I will briefly describe how RMS is being used in projects and systems. So I will not go into too much detail here, but just to explain you that the line at the top of this slide represents the full life cycle of a product. And you can see marked with green stars the areas or processes where referential data is being consumed. And the yellow stars represent areas or processes where integration with RMS is either being worked on or is planned for the near future. And in the table at the bottom of the slide, you can see all the systems that are being integrated. There's an explanation on whether the data held in those systems corresponds to the human or the vet domain. And there's also a description of the regulatory processes covered by those systems. In the last section of the presentation before the Q&A, I'd like to give a quick summary on the RMS activities that the team is busy with at the moment, and also I would like to explain what is planned for the future. So in terms of project work, RMS started creating lists for the DADI project in the second quarter of this year, and there's still some work pending until the end of the year. And the same goes for the AZU project. A total of 4 lists have been created this year for Iris, and several other lists have been created for SMS and for the purposes of PMS implementation. For the remaining of the year, we also plan to be busy with the update of several RMS lists for PMS and UPD implementation, as well as for the creation of new lists for shortages, for real-world data, and perhaps for the CTIS portal, although this is yet to be confirmed. Now, there's a separate work stream dedicated to maintaining and improving regulatory data services. And here, the RMS team will continue with the daily data stewardship and service desk activities throughout 2022. In addition, in the first half of the year, we did some preparatory work to outsource part of the RMS activities, and the relevant knowledge transfer is planned to take place very soon, and this should go on for several months. For Q4 this year, we also plan to work on the profiling of the data quality of RMS, and we also plan for any other relevant monitoring activities. Concerning the third work stream on customer experience and awareness, this is the third webinar this year dedicated to RMS, and we are planning for a SPO customer satisfaction survey towards the end of this year. And in addition, we are planning to review and improve the content of the list information document for the top 5 lists with validation issues. And this is precisely to tackle some of the change request rejections that could be avoided. In terms of activities planned to improve RMS in the remaining of 2022 and throughout 2023, there are 4 main areas of focus. The first one is to set up a connection between the Spore API and the Medra API, as this would allow for an automated synchronization of the content of the Medra list. The next area concerns the fact that the current RMS API only provides the current version of RMS data. This is not ideal, and therefore the API is being reviewed so that the API also gives information on older versions of RMS data. The third area of these improvements is the creation of a pop-up window in the RMS portal with a reminder that the request should contain supporting documentation. And this is in an attempt to reduce the number of returned change requests due to missing supporting documentation. The last area for development is a change in the RMS portal, which will allow for the specification of more than one contact point for change requests, as we think that this will be more convenient. For example, in cases where the user who submitted the request is out of the office when a response notification is being sent, or in cases where more than one person should be following up on a specific change request. So this is the end of my presentation, but just before moving to the Q&A session, I just wanted to show you a slide explaining where you can find more information on SPORE and RMS. So in the SPORE portal, you can find reference documents such as the RMS Web User Manual, which provides guidance on SPORE services and functionalities. You can also find the SPORE User Registration Manual, the SPORE affiliation template to register the first industry super user, and the RMS new list template, amongst others. You can also find training videos on RMS and OMS on the EMA YouTube channel, and you can see the link in the slide. ServiceNow should be used for service requests or service issues, or if you need any technical support. You can also see the link to the EMA account management portal, which you will need to create a new EMA account to get access to SPORE in case you don't have it. And last but not least, you will find information on SPORE, including important documentation on the EMA corporate website. And you also have the link to this in the slide. So this is the end of my presentation. And at this point, I think we can move to questions. So I think we have received quite a number of questions. You will have probably logged in Slido at the beginning of this presentation. But in case you haven't done this, just a reminder of the link and the codes to go in Slido. So I think at this point, I will now switch from the presentation to the Slido, and we can have a look if there are any questions that haven't been addressed yet. So bear with me a minute, please. Okay, so I believe you can all see the Slido, and I'm going to the start questions, which I believe are the ones that haven't been addressed yet. So the first one, what kind of supporting document is required? Can you give the example? So unfortunately, there's not a question for which we have a generic response. Each list is different. So our number one advice is to consult the list information document that accompanies each list, and that should give you specific advice on the actual list that you are working with and what is the supporting documentation that is recommended. I think if I tick this, it should be archived. Yes. So how can we get a notification when any list has been updated in RMS? So this can be achieved through the subscription functionality in RMS. So basically, if you log in the RMS portal, you can go to, there's an area which is subscriptions, and basically there you can specify what are the lists for which you would like to be notified if there are changes. So yeah, so that's through the SPORE portal, and you can find more details on that on the RMS web user manual. You have the link in towards the end of this presentation, and you can just search for subscriptions, and you will find step-by-step instructions on that. Now, does EMA make changes in RMS directly? Do they notify to users? So the first part, yes, we do make changes in RMS directly. Sometimes if it's not an EMA owned list, so for example, the ATC list, for example, what we will do is basically replicate the content from the source. But in cases of EMA-owned lists, indeed, we will make changes to RMS. Typically, those will be in the context of a change request, but depending on the case, if needed, we can also make changes directly in the database. And then the second part, do they notify to users? No, we don't, but this is precisely the aim of the subscription functionality. So if you want to be notified for changes in specific list, please refer to the subscription functionality. You can find more information in the RMS web user manual. Is it possible to involve another user from our company in my change request to keep him updated on the process outcome or let him respond if needed? This will be important in case of absence of the user that submitted the change request. Yes, so we've covered this in the part where I was explaining the future improvements of RMS. So this is precisely something that we want to implement. So currently, the RMS change request area only allows for the specification of one email address, and we plan to allow for the inclusion of more than one address precisely to help in these situations. How does EMA validate the change requests of RMS? What are the key factors to be considered in submitting change requests? Yeah, so again, I don't think we have an answer that can fit all lists. Again, I would recommend that you have a look at the list information document that is next to each list in RMS. And similarly for data stewards, we might use different resources or information to validate the requests depending on the list and the nature of the content, basically. So there's no one size fits all, so to speak. Okay. Then, can users submit ATC change requests to WHO and EMA at the same time? Yes. So basically, the owner of the ATC human and vet lists is WHO. So the request should definitely go to WHO. But in parallel, the request can also be submitted to EMA. And we will, of course, consult with WHO, and we will only publish. We can publish the terms as provisional or as current, but this will be basically replicating the content from WHO. Okay, so from what I can see, I don't think there are any other questions pending, but if there are any, you've got the information on how to send those after this webinar. Sorry, yes, just another question. This is the first time I have approached this topic. I would like to ask on a really practical level, how is RMS used? I'll give a very generic discussion, generic answer, because I think we could do a whole session on this. But basically, the lists that are available in RMS, they are already being used by many EU systems, such as EIF, the Clinical Trials Portal, GMDP, IRIS, etc. So in practical terms, when you request a term to be added in RMS, it then gets automatically created in all of those systems. That's a quick answer. If you have any specific concerns, I would recommend maybe that you approach me outside of this meeting. Okay, so I think all questions have been covered at this point. Yeah, my colleague Isabel is addressing as we speak one remaining question. perhaps I think at this point we should stop with the questions, and I would invite you to submit any questions in written if you have anything else pending on the RMS side. And I think at this point we can hand over to the colleagues from ServiceNow. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, let me just wait a minute just to. Okay. So now we can welcome colleagues from ServiceNow. Please, you can take a lead. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can see my screen. My name is Marcelo Namishas. I work in the digital workplace, and we have been involved in the implementation of ServiceNow and the transition of services from Jira to the new platform. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, it is about to provide you a brief overview of how we implement the ServiceNow. I will show you where you can get some training materials. Then I will proceed with some brief demonstration of the customer portal and the mobile phone app. And then after that, we will go for some question and answers through Slido. Yeah, Jira, which it is a tool that EMA has been using for the service desk for a long time, since 2015. Contains a lot of different services for internal users, external users, and so on. Due to the agency cloud strategy and security, and with customer orientated in mind, we are moving to a new platform, ServiceNow. The process consists in different stages. The first stage consists in the development of the customer portal, IT-related incidents and IT-related service requests, and the mobile app. Further stages will follow. But that means that we will be working on two different platforms. Jira for what it is change management and IT tickets backlog. So that is basically all the IT incidents and IT requests that they were created and are still open before they go live of the new platform. And the other platform will be ServiceNow for the new IT incidents and requests. We went live with a new platform on the 12th of September. And that was for internal and external users, so everyone. The ServiceNow access link is communicated through Jira, as Jaume demonstrated before, and through the EMA corporate website. Sorry. The training material is a video that consists on 5 minutes. It's hosted by Vimeo. And that video can also be seen, the link to that video basically, can also be seen on the current, the old Jira platform, which it is this one. So you can see over here the link to the video, as well as the link to the new platform. As I am now over here showing you the old platform, I can show you that some of the services that have been moved, they are still visible in Jira, but with a tag of move to ServiceNow, and the form is being disabled, but there is a link to the new platform. So it's easy to see what services have been migrated. You see now there is no possible to submit this request, but there is a link to the new platform in here as well as in here. When you click on that link, or if you go to the corporate website, at the bottom there is some links as well about the the EMA service desk, where you can see over here that for technical issues with IT systems, click on this link and this one will go to ServiceNow. However, some other systems like CTIS, they remain in Jira. So there is a link over here for that as well. When you click on this link, you will come to ServiceNow. It looks at that. You will be prompted to log in. The login process is more secure than the one that we use in Jira because it's a cloud platform and therefore the security requirements are higher. We have a two-factor or multi-factor authentication. The possibility of having a shared account, like sometimes happen in Jira, is now not allowed. So it's more secure. As a quick overview, let me make it a bit bigger so everyone can see it better. On the top of the portal, there is a banner, and that banner contains information of things that are happening at the moment, like announcements or system down or plant maintenance, or in this case, we have knowledge-based articles that helps users with information about how to navigate and how to use the portal. Those articles will be based on the permissions of the user. So some users will see more articles and some users will see less articles. Then the second part, it is the EMA logo, which it is also a home screen. So wherever you are, you click on the EMA icon, and you will always come to the home screen that it will look like that. It may look different based on the permissions of each user. There is some button, okay. Because I am a backend agent, I see this button to go to the backend, but external users will not see that. My tasks, over here, it is the things that I have assigned to me for action. At the moment, I don't have anything. My requests are the things that I have created that I can follow up. At the moment, I don't have anything open, but if I look at my closed ones, I can see that there is something in here. And when I click on it, I can see how it looks. So I can see that the status is complete, closed. I can see the stages that happened during the process. And I can see the details of the activity and if there is any attachment or the additional details. So it's quite straightforward. And there is also a search bar over here. And the search bar allows you to search for anything. And that will prompt different elements. So for example, if I click on access, I can see that there are different services related with access and knowledge-based articles related as well with access. So this is quite useful when looking for something in particular. Over here, we have different categories. At the moment, we have IT, facility support, and others. But I can see facility support because I am an internal user. If I, as an administrator, impersonate someone else, those services are removed, and there are less options over here as well, because these are more focused for external users. If I click, for example, an application over here or application on the main category, which is the same, it will show the topics. You see the topics over here, that the same topics as over here, and all the services related to that. If I click on more, I can see more services, but I can also search by the topic. So if I click on sport, I can see the services that are specifically for sport. And when I go over there, I can complete the form. Yeah, it's quite straightforward. If I click in here, I go back to the home screen. So in here, there is also an area for viewing the activities, and in here for surveys. So once that an incident or a request is completed, you have the option to leave a survey. To complete a survey and leave feedback. At the bottom, you have the footer over here with some useful information and links and stuff like that. And there is a link as well over here to go back to the old service desk in case the service has not yet been migrated. And that concludes the brief demonstration of the customer portal. And now I will demonstrate the mobile phone application. Share screen, start broadcast. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. If you go to the, I'm using an iOS device, and I went to the App Store and I downloaded the application Now Mobile. Once that you download the application and you open it, it will ask you to sign in with your EMA credentials, and it will ask you for a server. The server, it is basically the same URL as we use on the web portal, which it is support.ema.europa.eu. Once that I open that, because I have already logged in, I can see how the mobile app look like. So there is an EMA logo and a welcome screen. There is a search bar on the top, which acts exactly in the same way as the search bar on the web portal. So if I click over here and I type access, I should be able to see all the services that are related to access, as well as knowledge base articles. So I can select either only services or just articles. Then I have the same as on the web portal, my task, my request. I have a direct link to report an issue, and I have the option to leave surveys for cases that have already been closed. At the bottom, there is an area where you can call directly the service desk for urgent matters. And because this is a mobile phone, you just click on the number and the phone call itself. And there is also one for audiovisual support. But these numbers are mainly for emergencies. Then on the bottom bar, there is a different icons. So at the moment I am on the home screen, but if I click on the services, I can see over here a list of services that the services again will be restricted based on the permissions of each user that use the application. So as you log in. And in here, again, if I go to applications, I go to sport, and I have all the sport related applications over here. And I can complete the form in the same way. The difference is that this is in the palm of your hand, it's always with you, and it is, you can do it on the go. Yeah, so very handy. I recommend you all to get it and have it always with you. And that concludes the demonstration of the mobile phone app. So now we can move to the question and answer session.
Okay, thank you, Marcelo. Jaume, could you please launch the Slido for me, please?
Is this fine, Miriam?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jaume. So we have a couple of questions here. I can read them out for you, Marcelo, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thanks.
So support now does not accept my credentials, even with the addition of ID as requested. Obviously, I'm not the only user experiencing this issue. Where can we find the solution?
Right. Probably it's better if I share my screen again, because I can show how external users can review the credentials and how to log in and stuff like that. So let me share my screen. Right. So if in the browser you go to the, let me just make it bigger. You go to register.ema.europa.eu. You will go to the EMA account manager page, where you can reactivate the account in case it is blocked, or reset your username or password in case you also have difficulties with that. Or if you don't have an account, you can create one. And at the bottom, there are some documentations and guidance. So for example, in here, there is a useful link, how to log in into EMA systems. This guidance over here is quite detailed. It goes step by step on how to log in. But basically, once that you use your EMA username, you need to add the id.ema.europa.eu to log in into these applications. I think it's quite clearly stated over here. And if you go into ServiceNow for first time, you will also be presented with something like that. Let me show you. If I go to ServiceNow, I go into the login page, it will be presented, sorry, not this one. I cannot present it because I am with a single sign-on. Maybe if I use a different browser, but it doesn't matter. The idea is that you will have to follow these instructions and use a multi-factor authentication method, which it could be that you need to download an application to authenticate. That is why using share account is not recommended because of the multi-factor authentication element. So I'll advise you, everyone, to go through these very useful instructions and to familiarize yourself how to log in into these EMA systems. Hopefully this answered the question.
Thank you, Marcelo. So we can proceed to another question, probably.
Yep.
Jaume, if you could launch the Slido again, please.
Sure. I think Marcelo needs to stop sharing, otherwise I'm not able to.
All right,
Right.
Marcelo,
Okay.
please.
I stopped sharing.
Okay, Jaume, I'll change your credentials as well, so please. I think there's quite a few questions that are repetitive, so I think we should leave those out. So like this one, for example, I think we have answered the one on top already, so we can probably disregard this one. Oh, question: ServiceNow access problems were not addressed yet. So Marcelo, I guess this is something that they are referring to, that lots of users are still struggling to log in. Maybe, do we have any solution?
Maybe I can help here. I have shared all the links, the useful links related to the access into our chat. And after this presentation, we also share the slides we were presenting before. So there is an helpful video that can drive you to do the login. However, if you are still unable to access and experiencing issues, please send an email to the servicenow@ema.europa.eu. Also share it in the chat, and we will start from there, and someone from the technical team will contact you in order to support with this issue.
Please include a screenshot when sending the email so we can see exactly what it is about.
Okay, thank you. On top, we have. Okay. Will EMA Service Desk will not be used now? Do we have to use ServiceNow from now on? Who is stealing the questions?
That will depend on the service. As I mentioned before, at the moment, as part of stage 1 of the transition, we only move IT services. So if you relate to IT services, that will be ServiceNow. Anything else that will still be in Jira, in the old EMA service desk. I think that we make it clear what services were transferred, because if you go to the old platform and you try to use the service, you will see straight away if that service was moved or not. And if it was moved, then you have a link to the new platform.
Thank you. Another question, EMA is using Azure. Our company is using Azure, but of course with different credentials. Hence, two-factor authentication does not work with our personal accounts. What shall we do? Was the question, did you understand the question?
Yeah,
This is
just thinking.
I'm not an expert on authentication. My understanding, based on conversations that we have in the past with IT security, is that there are different methods of authentication. So if one method is not working, perhaps you can use a different one. I know that you have the mobile phone app to authenticate, Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, but there is also a way to authenticate with a telephone number. I'm not entirely sure. This is probably more as a question for security. Unless, Carmen, do you know anything about this?
Well, it's a really Azure related topic. So I would suggest again, if they are unable to open the ticket, send an email to the address we shared, and we will forward or open a ticket on their behalf, so the related team can support.
I have another suggestion. There is a webinar on 3rd of October that will be dedicated only to EMEA account management. This webinar was advertised, so maybe if you would like to have answers to your questions regarding the EMEA account management, maybe you can sign up for the webinar and see if you can gain some more insight to this.
Yeah. Thank you, Miriam.
No problem. We have another question. Where can I download all the training material?
The training material, it is at the moment accessible by Vimeo as a video. And I'm not entirely sure if it can be downloaded or not. Do you know, Carmen, if the video can be downloaded?
I don't think it's an option on Vimeo, but I can double check.
But yeah, that video is accessible to anyone. You just need to use the link and the password.
Okay, and I think the last question that is on the screen has been already answered, and I don't see any more questions. So with this, I think we can wrap up. So thank you everyone for joining our webinar, and thank you our colleagues for ServiceNow to dedicate the time. We will obviously publish the slides in our SPOR portal, and we will also have the recording from this event, but please, it might take up to 60 days before it will appear on our YouTube channel. So in the meantime, if you will be patient, it will be there. So thank you very much everyone for joining us, and have a nice day.